Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. It's sure starting to look like in a month's time, we could see a massive auto worker strike where United Auto Workers from General Motors, Ford, Stellantis could be going on strike in a very, very big standoff with General Motors and the other big three that is really decades coming. Let me first tell you what I was just told by a former auto worker, longtime auto worker who's retired, but still very active in the union, really in the know as far as negotiations. He tells me, quote, all the buzz indicates yes to a strike, as do all the issues they're attempting to address. Pressure from the feds to settle would have some bearing, as it appears it did in the UPS settlement, but the parties are too far apart, especially regarding electric vehicle manufacturing, to avoid one. We'll get to the standoff in negotiations over electric vehicles in a little bit. Let me first read this part, because the key here is the recent change in UAW leadership, where UAW President Fain seems to be a throwback to Walter Reuther, the infamous UAW leader from the 20th century. Fain is not playing games, and he is really, really demanding major concessions from the big three. And it's about damn time. Let me show you this from Fortune. The United Auto Workers Union, which represents nearly 150,000 employees of companies that manufacture U.S.-made vehicles, kicked off in mid-July. The labor negotiation it undergoes every 4 years with the three main unionized auto workers. It's not clear that the UAW will agree upon a new contract with Ford, GM, and Stellantis, the automakers that manufacture Chrysler and 13 other vehicle brands, by the deadline on September 14th. The union's leaders skipped the traditional handshake ceremonies it usually holds with these automakers, which are often called the Big Three or Detroit Three. The union instead held grassroots photo ops. UAW leaders greeted ranked and file members at one Ford, one GM, and one Stellantis factory. The UAW's newly elected president, Fain, frequently denounces corporate greed and has proclaimed the union's willingness to go on strike. In the past, the union has held strikes against one automaker at a time, most recently in 2019 against General Motors, which we covered on the ground. I went there to Detroit and covered the strike after GM had laid off 15,000 workers. That was a major, major strike. But if they go on strike with all big three auto workers from GM, Ford, Stellantis, it could really make the strike in 2019 look like a walk in the park. Let me continue here. Quote, the big three is our strike target, Fain has said. And whether or not there's a strike, it's up to Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. The UAW has said it has more than $825 million in its strike fund to help workers make do without pay should they walk off the job. Fain has declared that the union will no longer maintain the somewhat cozy relationship with the big three that led to major concessions in the past. Can I get a hallelujah? I continue. Many of the union's other new leaders are also affiliated with the UAW's Unite All Workers for Democracy caucus, which launched a successful campaign to require the direct election of the union's top officials in 2022, with runoff elections held in 2023. They want to prevent a recurrence of a massive scandal that resulted in the federal prosecution of more than a dozen UAW leaders from 2017 to 2022. Let me get into some of the specific demands that Fain and the UAW are making here. The UAW presented the automakers with a list of demands, including a 40% wage increase premised on the compensation gains that the union says the company's chief executives have made over the 4 years since the last contract talks. That is extremely smart and kind of works in the public relations battle, because people hate the corporate greed, the bonuses, and the fat cats' major salaries, while workers are slaving away, breaking their backs, getting long-term injuries at really crap pay compared to the rise in cost of living and inflation. So setting the target and framing it around the executives' compensation increase over the years, very smart by Fain and UAW leadership. And with the pivot to electric vehicles, the union wants guarantees that workers hired at the automakers' new electric vehicle battery plants will be covered by the UAW national contracts, or at least given contracts with comparable wage and safety terms. Quote, I know these demands sound ambitious, but the big three are making record profits, so I know they could easily afford it. Mr. Fain said in an interview, we have to be a lot more aggressive to negotiate better agreements, to set a standard that raises people up to a middle-class lifestyle. I want to read that. I want to read one, too. I want to show you part of my interview with a UAW worker recently, Danya, who works at the Toledo General Motors, her statements as far as the negotiations and the likelihood of a strike.
I think that we can all agree, all across the board, that we're not treated correctly. We're underpaid. The retirees have been left in the dust for many years because we were repeatedly told we couldn't fight for them. We now know that that's not true. It's not a mandatory subject, but we can fight for them. Temps, we've got to get them at least in progression quicker than they are. Wiping out two-tier, which I might add is more than two-tier. We have a traditional pay, we have an in progression pay, we have a temp pay. That's 3 different tiers. So, all that needs to stop. Everyone, if you're there like it used to be, after 90 days, your top pay, that's it. That's all. You're hired in, and your top pay, full benefits, whatever. I think we need to get there again. There's no reason why we can't. And I think the membership can agree to that. Everything that they disagree to, I think that is one thing they can agree to. And that's, to me, the health and safety of us breaking our bodies down due to long hours that are mandated and whatnot. I think that should be, health and safety is a big strikeable issue. Economic gains, things like that. These are legitimate reasons to go out on strike. We're not just going out on strike because President Fain wants to pound his chest and show off. That he has the right idea. He's doing the right thing. The membership is behind him, I believe. They might not be 100% in agreement with everything that he's doing, but like I said, I think we can all agree that going out on strike it's warranted, especially across the board, all of the big three, not just GM. I think everybody in every auto of the big three is willing to go out, and I think they back Fain on that.
And that would be major because remember, in 2019, it was just General Motors. You get General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, 150,000 workers, primarily. I mean, obviously they're around the country, but it's heavily, heavily concentrated in Detroit, Ohio, the Midwest. You are going to have a massive, massive strike. You are going to have media, because media will not be able to ignore this kind of strike with these kind of numbers. And you're going to have political pressures on Biden, the Democrats, to actually support the workers, because you're at that point, September, basically a year away from the general election, and you are not going to want Trump and other phony populists to out-left you, because Trump might come out supporting the workers. So Biden will be in a tough spot. He probably will, in his heart, want to support the greedy corporate ghouls at General Motors and the other big three, but he might have to come out and agree with the big three, United Auto Workers' demands. Or he'll just give a muddled, vague statement like he has with Amazon and other workers demanding a livable wage and an end to the economic Hunger Games. I also want to show you part of that interview as far as electric vehicles, because one of the big issues is General Motors and the other big three, they're investing heavily in electric vehicles. They're doing a blitz in PR and marketing to say, we're going to get to zero carbon and all this good stuff to make themselves seem like, climate champions. But with that pivot to electric vehicles, they're also trying to cut workers' pay basically in half. Let's take a look at that part.
Well, as we know, if EVs come in, obviously powertrain and engine plants, things like that, we would probably be slimmed down. And that's what President Fain is stepping up to the plate for now. I'll give you an example. Lordstown, they closed, closed, whatever they did with Lordstown. That was another, I don't know what was going on with that. And then they turn right around and build a battery plant right behind it, non-union at the start. And I mean, what is going on here? So what I see happening
I was there, by the way. I spoke with the union there. I remember Trump told folks, don't move. Yeah, didn't work out.
Yeah. It was sad, and I'll tell you what. There at the time, their president Dave Green, who's now Region 2B regional director, what a fighter! He fought with everything he could to try to stop that, but he was up against some. What I feel, I don't know if he would say the same thing. I can't speak for him, but how I saw it on the outside looking in, he was against corruption back then. They weren't trying to. I don't feel that anyone was really trying to stop that. You know, it seemed like it just kind of flowed through and it was allowed, and boom, they were gone. And then somebody else was in the building building the very thing that GM said they couldn't build there. Um, and now they're in trouble. Lordstown's in trouble now. Now they're folding. I don't know. And then GM's got this battery plant behind them. Well, GM comes in, they close these plants down, and then they turn around and bring in a battery plant right behind them, non-union. So it seems to me like the game is, let's close down these union shops. We'll disappear for a year or two, and then whoop, we'll come back in and we'll build something and we'll hire, without the union. What they might not have expected was for the membership to vote union back in. So now they're under negotiations right now, trying to figure out what they're doing. And President Fain has made public announcements that he's trying to roll in the battery plants and into the national agreement, which would be the best thing to do. I think it's a fair thing to do. I think the big three shouldn't even battle that. They know that, they're going to have to do something with the EV when it comes to the union. We're not going to back down on that. We're not just going to let them have it and, walk away.
What you have here seems like a real intractable gap between what UAW is rightfully asking for and what General Motors is willing to give. If you actually look at what GM is willing to give, all you really have to do is look no further than their greedy CEO and her comments back in 2019 during the last strike. If you missed this, it's pretty much saying the quiet part out loud in terms of corporate America. This is GM Mary Barra, who in 2019 said, quote, "There's a lot of conversation about job security. Job security is not something you negotiate," she said. Job security is something that you earn, and making sure they all understand that and their role is something we'll double down on as we go forward. Well, then, with that kind of corporate leadership, it will make a massive strike all the more sweeter. As you know, if there's a strike with 150,000 auto workers in September, I will be there.